Please welcome the panel on Powering the Transition to Sustainability-Centered Growth, moderated by Business Insider's Deputy Bureau Chief, Meghan Morris.
Good afternoon to those still awake and alive. Thank you for joining us in the most important session, that is right before cocktail hour. My name is Meghan Morris. I'll be your moderator this afternoon. I'm the Deputy Bureau Chief for Business Insider's newish bureau here in Asia. Out of Singapore, I cover anything that's going on in Asia daylight hours, including manufacturing, regulatory concerns, ESG, some of the topics that we'll get into this afternoon. I am taking note that we only have 45 minutes. As both a journalist and an athlete, I am usually good at adhering to deadlines. So if you do have questions, please save them for our delightful panelists for cocktail hour that follows this. With that, I would love our panelists to introduce themselves, both with your name, what you're up to, and just to make things spicy from the start, one pressing regulatory challenge you're facing today. So let's begin to my left, please.
Thank you very much, Meghan, for putting me on the spot first. My name is Anindya Bakri. I'm from Indonesia, chairman of Chambers of Commerce and Industry. I'm also CEO of Bakri Brothers. That's an 82-year-old startup out of Indonesia. I think the biggest challenge for Indonesia is how to combine between technology and capital at the same time to empower the decarbonization potentials that we have. Yeah.
Thank you. Penny, over to you.
Hi, my name is Penny Burch. I am the president of Boeing Southeast Asia. Boeing is a very well-known aviation and aerospace company with a very significant footprint here in the Asia Pacific. And in terms of regulatory challenges, I love it, Meghan, that you get right in at the very outset. I think for all of us across the sustainability agenda, and this is, I think, very much the case in aviation, one of the most significant challenges is while we have ambitious global targets and objectives, actually it's harmonization of approaches in policy and regulation and targets across regions and at local level.
Thank you.
Okay, that's me then. I hope everybody's feeling good. Meghan said it's a most important session, so I'm looking for the energy from the room. But my name is Ahmad. I'm the CEO for Ahmad. This is a new company based in Riyadh. We have $100 billion as Investco and Opco. And in terms of most significant challenge from regulatory perspective, I think it's an opportunity. Today, the businesses cannot achieve its full potential without the public-private partnership. And regulators are enabler of that. So in my experience, if we can go to regulators and talk about what we are trying to accomplish, what we have learned, what help would we like, we have seen so far to be quite amenable and quite partnership-centric. So I think a challenge can be turned into opportunity, and that's what I'm hope is around the world as well.
Hi, I'm Nik Nazmi. I'm the Minister of Natural Resources and Environmental Sustainability. It's quite a long title from Malaysia. And with regards to the challenge, I think one of the major challenges that I find is to get the small and medium-sized companies to be on the path of sustainability. What I would describe as companies that can't afford to have a chief sustainability officer. So I think that's a major challenge because they are a backbone of many economies, including Malaysia, and we need them to be part of the solution.
Thanks. Let's stick with regulation to dive in a little bit more to understand how each of you are working with the government or, from the opposite seat, working with private partners to think through working on decarbonization targets in particular. There's so much that we could cover in general with government partnerships. But what does an interplay between your business or that of your industry and perhaps one regulator? Penny pointed out there are many, especially in this region. But talk me through what that looks like at a day-to-day level. Open question for anyone who would like to start.
Yeah, I mean, I think first and foremost, the transition is an opportunity, not necessarily a challenge. I mean, we are looking at creating a sustainable economy from regulation perspective, but I would rather approach it from business opportunity perspective. You have $3.2 trillion that have to be invested just on the energy transition globally, just on the infrastructure side. You have a significant talent upgrade that you have to do. Hundreds of billions of dollars have to be invested. You have new materials to be discovered and to be enabled for new uses. So I give you an example. We all use smartphones and we all have sort of cars that are becoming more digital. But silicon carbide that's used in power electronics take 200 times more power to process and create than normal silicon. But it leads to a significant energy savings in usage side. So when you're deploying in the car, your power efficiency going up, but the processing is upfront is much higher from a power perspective. So somebody looking at end-to-end optimization perspective, from carbon journey, from looking at how to optimize the system, those are the set of opportunities that will require. This transition is not going to be easy. It's going to take, as I mentioned, public-private partnership, but it's also going to be on multi-vector. It's not just one vector. Regulation is just one vector. There's many vectors to be solved for us to be able to move to sustainability growth, sustainability-centered growth.
Minister Nik Nazmi, maybe you could speak about what you like to see when companies approach you, when they're ready to be in dialogue with the government. What are some of the things that you're hoping to see, perhaps that don't always come in a proposal or in your initial talks?
Well, on one hand, I think from the company side, they like to see direction and certainty. As much as they might complain or they feel that certain policies are challenging for them, but once we set a target, a firm target, they tend to be very supportive. So for example, previously our net zero target was as early as 2050, which was a bit vague. The new government has decided to be firm on 2050 as our net zero target. And as a result, I think companies know what to do. But as far as the government is concerned, I do think that a lot of the bigger companies, I think they have been able to address a lot of the issues. Our stock exchange in Kuala Lumpur, it's very demanding when it comes to sustainability standards. So a lot of that has been ingrained to a great extent. But I think one of the issue for us is, again, going back to the challenge of a just transition, to make the transition as inclusive as possible with regards to their workers, with regards to the companies, again, to the SMEs, as I mentioned. And I think that is a major challenge. And we do hope that when we talk to the bigger corporate players, that they can look at it from that aspect as well. Because if that is not addressed, being a politician, we can look at the political repercussions across the world when people feel that transition is a major cost for them, particularly for the ordinary people.
Yeah, on that point, we spoke this morning on another session. This can be inflationary up to 16% in Europe context if energy transition is not taken right. This is a massive issue to manage this right, what the minister said. And the way we have to do this, we have to find, it's not that we have to choose between energy transition and sustainability and the growth. We have to figure out a solution for both together, and that's why it's a multifaceted problem to solve. Solutions are there, though, today.
Meghan, I just wanted, after you. I just wanted to jump on that point about, Ahmad, that was very well made about regulation actually being an opportunity, not just a challenge. And, in the aviation sector, we have the International Civil Aviation Authority that has set a sort of global net zero target by 2050, which is not surprising. But for all of us across industry, across government, a very broad stakeholder group, which we're very excited to kind of help be part of and convene, we can actually come together underneath that broad thing and work on policy shaping, on developing targets, and actually regimes that are going to get us to where we need to be. So it's not necessarily about interacting, Meghan, with just a regulator and being concerned about, constraints in what we're doing. It's actually about coming together to develop the kinds of practices, policies, and procedures that we need to get to where we're going. I would just add, one of the things that we found that we can really contribute very effectively as industry is data and insights that help inform the policy process. So in the climate area, we've developed a great model called the Cascade model, which actually can take inputs and show us the implications of any measures that you adopt in aviation on sustainability and emissions. And we've developed that, and it is freely available to governments, to regulators, to other companies. I think that kind of partnership is going to be really important as we all address the agenda.
Yeah. I think the perspective I would like to give is that Indonesia actually see this decarbonization initiative as the glass half full. Because one, we feel this is probably an opportunity to solve the trilemma of energy, economy, as well as environment at the same time. Primarily because we see that below the ground we have the critical minerals that people need for decarbonization, whether that's nickel, copper, zinc, tin, whatnot. And above the ground, we believe being in the equator, we should be able to produce over time up to 500 gigawatt using hydro, solar, wind, geothermal, and so forth. And lastly, let's not forget the biodiversity that we have above the ground with the forests, peatlands, and mangroves, which actually absorb more carbon than the forest itself, plus, of course, the ocean. So let me just give you one example. This one, I would say, with nickel that people talk about, this phenomena has been happening only in the last 7 years. And this nickel downstreaming to become stainless steel, not yet to become battery materials, which is coming, has increased the GDP per capita in the eastern part of Indonesia region 3 times more than the national average in terms of the percentage. So this is something that we are very proud and we're very happy that the stars are aligned, because you can imagine if we don't see that as something that can be empowering to the rest of the Indonesian people, this will be seen again as the play of the big boys, right? And a lot of times, the big corporations who play this, a lot of times also come from hydrocarbon and traditional energy background. Therefore, if you want to do something different, you better do something, different with good energy consequences and bringing the welfare up for the people.
Now, the voices on the stage represent major manufacturers from across the region and into the Middle East as well. But I'd love to drill into something that the minister spoke about, and that's the struggle of getting SMEs on board to have the capacity, resources, time, et cetera, to reach the kinds of targets we need, and also for those of us in the room who work on multi-scope emissions, thinking through what does our entire supply chain look like, how are we making sure that we're not just meeting regulatory requirements, but also looking up and down to those that our clients or suppliers are imposing on us. We've got a great example from Boeing of data and a push to share numbers with governments and other partners. How else can major companies, such as those represented on the stage, work with those SMEs so they can have easier conversations with our minister in the future? How are you thinking about that in terms of your smaller suppliers and those a little bit smaller scale than a Boeing or other major manufacturers?
So I'll, if it's okay, I can start.
Please.
So first and foremost, we are transitioning where sustainability has a seat on the table, which means a new system has to be created with its own incentives. It hasn't been created yet, whether it's a carbon markets, carbon trading markets, or whether it's a brand positioning where pricing power comes in because you have done the business right. A lot of those things is yet to be established. So while regulation will help, but I think the regulators and the government has to enable that transition to the new system that benefits the people who follow the best practices in sustainability, in the proper way of waste management and others. every large company has to ensure its suppliers are following that. But at the same time, new technology, new materials, and new sources of energy has to be there as well to transition over economically, not just inflationary. As I mentioned, inflation is, you can be regulatory first, you can shut down the growth, you can just all be sustainability, and inflation will kill you. You have to be able to do both. So coming back to your question, I would say every large company has to ensure that the suppliers are following the right practices, have the access to the right cheap energy. In our case, the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia has spent about 266 billion for just energy transition over the next 5 years, and almost 3 trillion for next 7 years for all energy, materials, and the manufacturing side. So I would say the key thing is governments have to ensure they're paving the path for new systems, whether it's a carbon trading or sustainable energy, or creating the system where the trust is established and fraud do not exist. That's where the regulators have to work with. And instead of being anti-industry, they have to collaborate and take the best examples from the industry, whether it's Cascade or others, to be able to bring together the new system that is needed for the transition to new type of economy.
What do those conversations look like in Indonesia? That's, I think everyone can agree at a high level that we want to be aligned and everything like that. But when you're talking manufacturing in a market that can be quite fragmented, how do you help downstream suppliers or others stay on target with your own company's sustainability goals and regulatory concerns as well?
Yeah. I think we take a very pragmatic approach. First, we want to have a proof of concept before we scale it. So we come from a background, energy background group with focus on traditional energy, as we mentioned, as well as industrialization, especially in steel, and also digitalization. So we thought probably the best way to start is the electrification of public transportation. And we have a separate project. Now it is a listed company. It is one of the largest EV company in Indonesia, which is homegrown. And we decided to provide services to Transjakarta, which is the bus rapid transit of Jakarta, which is actually one of the largest in the world. And with this electrification, at least we make it public that it carries a lot of benefits for Indonesia. The first one, indeed, the fuel subsidy that Indonesia has is about $10 billion a year, which is a lot of money. And the second thing, the respiratory disease that is being treated is about $1.2 billion. And plus just being in the public transportation that is no smell, no sound, it brings a lot of confidence when people go to the office in the morning, right? So then you start with that, bringing the awareness, and we're very happy to see that these buses of ours, the first batch of about 60 buses, they have traveled to 2 million kilometers, saving about 5,000 CO2 emission, 5,000 tons, which is equal to 250,000 of trees being planted. But we don't stop there. Then we try to scale it by going a little bit, vertically integrated, trying to build these buses and trucks in Indonesia locally with our partner BYD. And this is one of the examples of how we do it. But then it should not stop by being the distributor, manufacturer, with Indonesia having the natural resources that we talk about. I think very soon we should be able to process it with the help of partners to build the battery materials. Maybe not yet the battery, which needs a lot of technology, and we have a lot more sophisticated partners to do it, but that's how we do it. We focus on a specific project, and it brings a lot of confidence to the organization. It brings a lot of trust from the public market if you can take it public, and I think the more we do that, the better it is. And lastly, I think in my role as a chairman of Chambers of Commerce and Industry, I think leading by example is one way to do it. But don't forget that Indonesia is pretty much 95% small medium enterprises that involve in the economy.
Thank you. Penny, you look like you're keen to say something.
I just wanted to jump in and say taking that lens over the Southeast Asian economies and beyond just SMEs, one of the interesting things that we've focused on recently is sustainable aviation fuel. And the potential actually in Southeast Asia for the agricultural sector to make a contribution there, including through agricultural waste. And while, let's think about every farmer is an SME at some level, it's actually quite an interesting long-term income opportunity for us to really look at taking what is waste material in that sector to support the SAF industry and the emergence of a SAF industry in this region. And our partnership and modelling our recent research suggests that Southeast Asia could actually provide up to 12% of global SAF supply by 2050. The implications, of course, for the agricultural sector in Indonesia, in other parts of the country, in Malaysia, is profound, I think, and transformational in the long term. I think the other thing I wanted to say just briefly about SMEs is for larger companies, as we try to drive emissions reduction through greater efficiencies, whether that is using data or new digital applications or modifications, ultimately, as we improve what we do, and we're constantly working and iterating, or we're developing new technologies and testing them, we actually have an echo demonstrator where we test out new technologies designed to drive sustainability outcomes. A lot of that trickles down, of course, into our partners and supply chain, because as we get better and we improve our own technologies, then the whole industry actually, comes along with us. So that's a great opportunity.
Let's talk a little bit about testing and looking toward the future. For each of your industries, how will we talk about these subjects differently in 10 years? How will your jobs and that of your colleagues be much different, particularly with when we're thinking through decarbonization, manufacturing processes, the interplay of some of the organizations and stakeholders we've thought through?
Well, I certainly hope within 10 years the carbon market has figured out its shape, right? Because it's very much important for Indonesia with what we discussed before, the carbon dioxide absorption capability. And if there is a way we can find, funding that is agreed by the standard of the world, I think those can actually fuel a lot of the growth for the downstreaming of the critical minerals, the building of the renewable energy, and the industry coming along with it. So I think, within 10 years, that's certainly our hope. That should be, already working, because it's not going to be easy to find the financial market, until, the technology is available and very competitive with the hydrocarbon and the traditional energy. I mean, you see a lot of great examples in the Middle East and in India in terms of how scale can reduce the price indeed. But I think for a country like Indonesia with 17,000 islands, we need to think about also a system of financing that is sustainability by itself. Yeah.
So, first of all, I am a big believer in human ingenuity and sort of us putting our mind and resources behind solving a problem. And time after time, I think we have done that. So I think in this case, I believe it's the same issue that we all need to basically say this is important. I think my hope and wish would be that in 10 years from now, we're not talking about sustainability as a separate topic. It is a table stake. It is core principle. There are sort of 8 vectors in which I think things have to change. Of course, I talked about energy transition. That itself requires $3.2 trillion of investment every year globally, versus 1 today that is happening. So imagine how much funding gap we have just on the energy transition. Then, of course, as AI comes into the forefront, we are discovering new materials on a regular basis that's going to lead to better power efficiency, better sustainability metrics. We have design, we have markets that will sort of reward the people who follow the right practices, carbon trading and others. You also have a individual responsibilities that has to come in. The brand should be able to get rewarded for the following practices. Regulations will come into the play as making sure the trust is there based on the claims that the brand may be making. So greenwashing doesn't kind of come into the play. I would say we will put new kind of designs to create new products that by design are more sustainable. I think that's the journey I see for next 10 years and beyond. And again, as I said, I wish and hope that in 10 years from now, we will think of this as a core principle of product usability and product specification.
Minister, as someone who oversees everything from biodiversity to natural minerals, how does your job look different in 10 years?
Well, I guess in 10 years, we are in the works of completing our Climate Change Act, which will legally provide a framework for us to comply with our commitments at Paris 2015 and so on and so forth. We are also, and that will come latest by next year, we are also working on our National Adaptation Plan by 2026. So I guess by 10 years, this will provide us with a stronger platform to measure where we are going with regards to 2050. Under our current simulation, we are on track to achieve what we committed for 2030, but there's still a lot of things to do for 2050. And that will be the challenge. And the other part is that my hope is that this will be sort of a bipartisan, in Malaysia, within the Malaysian political context, it can be accepted by everyone. So whether I have a job or not is secondary. But what is most important is that this becomes a national policy that is accepted by whichever government comes into play. And I think one good example was the UK from during Gordon Brown's time, all the way to maybe Boris, where pretty much there was a consensus with regards to climate policies. After that, there were some differences, but that long period of certainty allows a lot of investments into transition to happen. So I think for Malaysia, a country, as you mentioned, we have a lot of rare earths within our boundaries. We also have a lot of biodiversity. We are not as big as Indonesia or India or Australia, but we are one of the most mega diverse countries alongside them. And I think we want to harness that. And I think the hope is that within 10 years, I think ASEAN needs to come together because with 670 million people, we will be the fourth biggest economy. That is something that we should leverage on to have a stronger voice for the developing world and one of the most climate-exposed regions in the world to have that voice at the global stage.
Thank you. And
I want to build on his minister's comment. So big transitions happen. In 1920, many of the companies used to have Department of Electricity, right? And then it sort of became pervasive. In 2000, many companies had Department of Internet, right? Now look back at it, it just sort of feels like what we were thinking, because everybody thought this was something new, let's try it out, and then it became ubiquitous and it became pervasive. And so minister's comment, whether I'm in the role or not, it made me think about it, saying that we hope that sustainability is not seen as a sort of let's try and let's see what can be done with it. It becomes that pervasive force that drives all our actions going forward.
And Penny, on the question of 10 years from now, how does Boeing and manufacturing processes look different from where you're sitting?
I think it looks fundamentally different. I've already talked about some of the trends and some of the steps we're already taking to make it fundamentally different. And I just step back and level set for a minute. I mean, currently, the numbers of people traveling by air per annum, it's about 4 billion, flights per year. Many of you in this room to get here. If we forecast out to 2050, which is a little bit more than 10 years, but bear with me, we're looking at 10 billion air passengers a year. That is the scale of that is absolutely profound. So how should it look? Well, and what does Boeing want to do about it? First of all, currently, aviation is actually quite well placed because we only constitute 2% of global carbon emissions. That's a nice little number. So where we hope to be is less than that, obviously, given the 2050 targets. And where we'd like to be is in a situation where things like use of sustainable aviation fuel is normalized. Currently, sustainable aviation fuel accounts for less than 1% of global fuel usage in aviation. Boeing aircraft, both commercial and military, are actually currently equipped for 50%. So even making that small shift from, the less than 1% to half filling the tank with sustainable aviation fuel and making use of that, when we model that, that actually takes us an incredible distance in the aviation sector towards that sort of net zero and sustainable outcomes. But I actually wanted to go back and say what I'd actually really like to see, and I think we all aspire to, is that idea that sustainability is just a mainstream part of everything that we do. And in Boeing, that is the way that we're thinking, of fleet maintenance, fleet renewal, development of new aircraft. It's not a, and sustainable, it's a sustainable. So, thank you.
Now, we wouldn't be a panel in 2024 if we didn't talk about the two letters everyone loves the most, AI. When we think through baking sustainability in, I also think AI will likely be baked in this 10-year vision, but in the here and now, instead of 10 years from now, we're in 2050. How are each of you thinking about the buzzword of the last 2 years? And could you give me a specific way that you are using it rather than a general, we like AI, we think it's the future? We can all agree on that. I'm seeing some nods, so go ahead, please.
No, sure. I think let me continue to use the electrification company that we do, which is focusing on public transportation. I think AI can be used and is being used for at least two things in our operations. Number one, for the predictive maintenance and capital expenditure, especially for our clients. Bear in mind, our clients are those who buy our buses, whether they are operators or the end users. So with the AI, we implement this platform that can enable them to predict the maintenance and how much capex they actually have to incur. And that's very useful because then you can plan. You can plan ahead for the future of your budget. And number two, I think certainly the optimization of energy, right? How do we make sure that when we do our own manufacturing, or when we use the buses or trucks, which is actually bigger by far in terms of market in Indonesia, the energy is being optimized, right? It's one thing to be able to use the battery instead of fossil fuel, but if you can actually use the battery even more efficiently, it is also as good as anything else. So at least those are the two things that we use in our operations, Meghan. Yeah.
Thanks. Penny, I know you're not terribly long on the job, but could you give us one viewpoint into how Boeing is thinking through AI in a specific use case?
Sure. Let me give you two.
Please.
First of all, very much as Anand has just suggested, AI is actually an opportunity across manufacturing. So in every instance where we can bring AI solutions to increasing efficiency, operational efficiency, manufacturing efficiency, that has like a direct benefit on the bottom line for sustainability. I learned, and yes, I'm very new in Boeing, I actually just learned that we're using AI applications in application of livery. When you spray paint a plane and you put the livery on, we're using AI applications to actually, and robotics, to reduce the sort of human involvement and speed the process. Really interesting. A second area where we're looking at AI is actually not in the manufacturing process, but we have to remember in aviation that the way that airports work and is, is vital in terms of how we think about energy efficiency. And Singapore has just launched a new aviation innovation center, where one of the areas that we're really keen to explore is use of AI solutions at the gate to optimize for efficiency and, reduce time, time at gate, which is absolutely crucial, and speed process in ways that are going to deliver really good long-term sustainable outcomes by reducing energy output.
On behalf of the many frequent flyers in this room, thank you for reducing gate times. That is something that we can all benefit from.
Early days, Innovation Center. So
Excellent.
that's watch this space.
And over in Saudi Arabia, as someone who works across a variety of sectors, could you pick just one of those or two, if you'd like to give us a bonus, and talk through AI and a use case for us, please?
Yeah, so AI is that superlative word that is sort of hitting the tipping points. I mean, I did my graduate work in neural networks and fuzzy logic, which is, wrote the code on a 386 computer and ran. It used to run all night long to produce something that today would take a microsecond on your phone. I mean, but that's just, that either tells you my age or tells you how good the computing industry has gone. But either way, it has definitely changed. But the point being is that if you look at AI, and if I can simplify this in ways, first and foremost, it is an augmenter for whatever you do. So whether it's OpenAI or anything else, it can increase productivity up to 30% immediately. So that's sort of and if you're an agent, you're taking a call, or now calls can really be deciphered, use be training. There's many examples of it where human-driven systems sort of get more efficient. The second is that actually it accelerates the trends that have been in the place for a long time. So whether it is automation inside the factories, or about quality checks, or about the ability to do things that has been going on for a long period of time. I know a company that used to take 50 call centers around the world and be able to say where is inconsistency between these 50 call center and at what stage of answering the call. It's not humanly possible any other way. So this is sort of an example. And the last piece is it builds new system, which is not possible humanly. Example of that is if you have a drone-based delivery system, it's not possible to solve it humanly because it's not a fixed location where the delivery vehicle takes off, and it's not a fixed location where it drops off. And it's in three-dimensional. To coordinate all of these things in real time, it's not possible to do it. You have to design the system with AI-first mindset. So fundamentally, you have to think about this, that AI is an enabler of productivity. It accelerates the existing trends, which Boeing and others may be doing anyway, and then it builds a new kind of system, which leads to abundance in many ways that is around the corner. We must embrace it. We must train our people for it, our kids for it, and we must create the opportunity for all to leverage AI to create abundance in people's life.
Thank you. And from the government's perspective, whether it is a practice that you're employing or something that you hope to see from public-private partnerships or other systems, how are you thinking about best practices for AI and what that looks like on the ground right now?
Well, my ministry directly, I mean, at this point of time, we are not really utilizing it in a big way. But I think that as moving forward and with our ambitious net zero goals and whatnot, for example, how we distribute and generate our electricity, that is something where AI is required. Obviously, when we have more distributed generation with solar, it will be very different from the mostly baseload generation that we have today. That's one. But it's how we utilize and deal with the demands of the grid that will also be very critical. Because then we can, maybe we don't have to run every power plant at full capacity all the time and all that. Now, obviously, I mean, that is being done, but without a strong element of AI. So I think with AI, then that can be done more efficiently, smart grids and whatnot. So, I mean, that's just one example, but I think that is, way more than aviation. Electricity generation is an emitter. So as we go towards the journey, we will still be using some fossil fuels like gas, and how we manage our grid is very critical in our decarbonization journey.
Thank you. Let's end in our remaining few minutes on the here and now and thinking through not big tech, but rather natural resources and capital management, how we think through managing nickel and other resources in a very resource-rich area. Are there any novel ways that your organizations are thinking through doing something different now compared with 5 or 10 years ago with regard to natural capital management?
I think as a group, we have been mining for the last 40 years, and being a local business group, having the right approach, not only for the environment, but also community developments is also very, very important, right? And yes, there are a lot of ESG standards out there, and we are ranked one of the highest in the region. So we're saying to ourselves, if we can do it for traditional energy or traditional mining, we can do it certainly for, the nickel, copper, and zinc that we're doing right now. But I think the most important thing is, I think Ahmad mentioned this morning as well, and also Mr. Minister Nik Nazmi. I think this sustainability thing, we should really be not only proud, but also confident, but also believe that you can actually generate a lot of progress and growth story with the sustainability, because look, about 20 years ago people talk about it, but we haven't seen the technology, the capital, and the urgency from a lot of countries that really matter. Now, Indonesia, for example, we know the data that the average of carbon emission per person per year is about 4.5 tons per year. Indonesia is about half of that, and the developed countries in the West about 20, 25. It's very easy for Indonesia to be complacent and say, hey, look, let us grow from $5,000 per capita to 20,000, and we talk about it. But I think the key is to see this as half full, as I mentioned in the beginning. And I think the young generation, if you talk about it, and Indonesia has 65% of the 285 million people, young Generation Z, X, and all that. And they are very proud being a part of this. And there's one data in Indonesia saying that, how average revenue per user for mobile services is about $3 in Indonesia. The survey is saying that they are willing to spend about $2 additional for spending in the fast mover consumer goods, as long as they believe that the initiatives have sustainability positive impacts in it. So just to share a few stats.
Thank you. Good news for our advertiser friends in the room. Penny, very briefly, natural capital management at Boeing, besides sustainable aviation fuel, anything else that you're thinking through?
Not an area I think that I would like to sort of deep dive on beyond just going back to the point I made about how in convening partnership and spotlighting opportunities, for example, in the agricultural sector and feedstock into SAF, we're actually thinking far more broadly than just, immediate aviation and aerospace into how we're interacting more broadly. So it might not be the mining sector today, although obviously minerals and critical minerals are key inputs for us in the aviation sector. But taking that much broader lens, we're very excited about what we can be doing to support the agricultural sector in the region here.
Thank you. And across multiple industries, someone who's thinking about not just your own work, but incentivizing partners around you and building up an area of excellence in the kingdom, natural capital management, I'm sure, factors in significantly. Could you talk us through just one area?
Yeah, I'll make 3 quick points.
Please.
One is that the energy transition is significant challenges and opportunity, as I mentioned, funding gap, and that is one area that I would say it pervades through everything that we do. And it does require the investments. Solutions are here. It's a leadership that matters. And I think this is where leadership is needed globally. I think Kingdom of Saudi Arabia is taking the leadership to transition, be 50% carbon zero by 2030. But that's just one country. We need this sort of same framework around the world. And so that's one, the leadership as well as energy transition. Second, I think this problem is so big, and I referred to it earlier, it requires significant public-private partnership and a lot more collaboration. Innovation needs to be accelerated. This cannot be done just by usual sense. It is a moral imperative, it's a business opportunity, and it's urgent and here and now. We need to lean into this, all of us, business leaders and others.
Thank you for a strong rallying cry. And Mr. Nik Nazmi, will end on you. Natural capital management or parting thoughts for our guests here?
Yeah, I mean, I think for Malaysia, because we still are covered by about 54% forest cover. And I think, in fact, some of our states are actually net positive in terms of carbon, right? I mean, they're absorbing more than they produce. So the challenge is, how do we protect? Because again, this is similar at a global scale. The states which have more forests also tend to be less developed. The society is poorer. So they are telling us, similar to the conversations I have with the developed world, they are telling the developed states in the Federation that there should be more compensation for keeping the natural capital. And carbon credits doesn't really pay for that, for what's existing. So I think that is trying to find ways to monetize that is something that is critical because, Malaysia has done relatively well in terms of protecting that. And I think there should be some financial incentives as well for us to keep doing so, because the role for adaptation, to deal with the heat stress and whatnot for our natural capital is huge.
Please join me in thanking my panelists for an engaging discussion and for leading us to our favorite hour of the day.
Meghan, thank you. Good job, good job.